Now let's move on to our third principle, that crowds are wise. The material here will be covered in the course. So to understand this, first think about any time you've gone onto Amazon to look up a product that you may or may not have ended up buying. But what would have influenced that decision is the star rating that Amazon attributes to each of the products. Here that's 3.5 stars. But if you ever sat back to think about how this rating is actually generated, if you look at it, it'll tell you the number of people in which this is aggregated. So it could be one person. That one person came on here and rated it as a 3.5. Now that's not all that reliable because it's only one person's opinion. But as you have more and more people that rate it, maybe this person gave it a 4, this person gives it a 3, this person gives it a 5, this person gives it a 2, this person gives it a 2.5, and so on and so forth. What Amazon does is they take the mathematical average of those numbers and they display the average star rating. Now, the principle of the wisdom of crowds is that the knowledge of the many is better than the knowledge of the few. So basically, as we have more and more people, this average rating will become more and more reliable. But we have to make a lot of assumptions about how these ratings are generated. And as we will see, those assumptions are not always going to be valid. Other things that complicate this are the fact that some people may just have different opinions about the product. This person may like this TV a lot because this person gave it a 5. This person over here may have given it a 1, may just not like this TV at all. It's not saying either of those ratings are wrong, it's just saying that they're different. Another thing that complicates it is that some reviewers have higher reputation scores than others. Specifically, Amazon has this Hall of Fame of reviewers. Now, another place in which this wisdom of crowds concepts comes into play is on Netflix. But with Netflix, we're not rating items, we're rating movies specifically. And so what Netflix does is Netflix wants to make a prediction of a rating for movies that you haven't yet watched. So it'll make a prediction for all these movies based upon your viewing history, movies you've watched, and also that movies of your neighbors, which we will define exactly what we mean by a neighbor in this course, have watched, and they will look at the responses and how well these movies have been received, and they will try to build a predicted rating for each of these movies that you haven't watched. And then it will take those ratings and use that to give you an ordered list of movies that you should watch. 1, 2, 3, and so on. And so the difference between Amazon's problem is that when Amazon, they're trying to come up with a single rating that is displayed to all the users. But in Netflix, they're trying to come up with different ratings for each user and predictions in order to make recommendations. So on this side, this is really a problem of rating, whereas in this one we bring it a step further to actually make recommendations. Unfortunately, things aren't always so great, which brings us to our fourth principle, that crowds are not so wise. And unfortunately, we won't have time to cover this material in this course. We will allude to it different times. But to really illustrate this idea of crowds not being wise, suppose you're walking down the street and you come up to someone who is looking up at the sky. So this is you, and you've just walked down the street. Now, if you see this person looking up at the sky, you might decide to look up at the sky too. See, maybe there's something interesting up there. Now, this person may just have a nosebleed or something, or he may just be trying to play a prank on you, just to get you to look up at the sky for some reason. But in any event, you follow suit and look up at the sky as well. Then, the person behind you comes up and sees you looking up at the sky and decides to do the same thing. And that continues, and eventually we have a whole group of people that are looking up at the sky for perhaps no reason. I mean, there might actually be something wrong with the sky, but there probably isn't anything wrong with the sky. This is what we call an information cascade. Basically, everyone ignores their own private signal, which is that there's nothing wrong with the sky, so there's no reason to look up at the sky, and follows the public action, which started by this person right here, that they see everyone else doing. And even though they don't think anything might be wrong with the sky, since everyone else is doing it, they decided they should do it too. Now, these information cascades are precisely what we mean when we say crowds are not so wise. They're easily influenced, and they tend to follow crowds even when crowds aren't necessarily correct. Now, these types of cascades tend to happen when people exchange information with one another about what they're thinking. And that's one of the assumptions that we made in the wisdom of crowds, is that we can't have people exchanging information and telling each other what they think. So this can't happen for the wisdom of crowds to hold. Everyone has to make their own guess. So one common example of this would be if you're working on a homework assignment and you have 3 of your friends here, and 3 of your friends are all saying that the answer to one question is B. So they all say, yes, they're working together, they've come up with the fact that the answer is B. Now, you may come along and think that the answer is A, but you don't want to be the odd man out, so you decide to put B in your paper, and you say, well, it's 3 against 1, so I may as well just put B because everyone else has. Now, it might turn out that A is actually the correct answer. One person came up with the idea that it was B, and everyone else followed him, not wanting to be the odd man out. So now, again, this is great, but how does this have to do with networking? Well, this really brings us to the whole idea behind social networks, in which we have people interacting and influencing one another. And one example of that is on YouTube. And these types of information cascades can explain why movies such as Gangnam Style and Charlie Bit My Finger Again have gone viral, and we've seen them explode to even billions of views. Gangnam Style has broken 1 billion. The idea is that as you see more people watching these videos, you will also be recommended to, and you will want to watch them to see what's so great about them. So we have information cascading here. Now, it's also prevalent in platforms like Facebook or Twitter, in which you actually have big, large social networks of people. And in Facebook, they're defined by friend relationships, where you might be friends with a certain amount of people, and everyone else is friends with other people, and so on and so forth. And then the question is that people would be able to determine who the influential people are in the crowd. So, for instance, if someone was standing right here, happened to be friends with a whole lot of people, happens to be very influential, then whatever this person does could have an impact on what everyone else sees on their news feeds, or what everyone else does as well. And we have influence that way.